Hello and welcome. The Online Safety Act. Will it protect children? Will it protect the vulnerable? Or might it do no such thing? Could it be an act that is going to has given the UK government unprecedented access to people's private lives? And in doing so, could this also mean that free speech, freedom of expression, has been crushed once more, perhaps beyond repair, if we're not careful? Well, what do you think about that? I'm interested, of course, in that. I'm also interested to find out what other people have been saying. Let's go first to GB News. Maybe they've taken a relatively moderate stance in terms of their opinions.
Rubbish.
Okay, perhaps not.
The Online Safety Act is the single greatest assault on free speech in modern British politics.
Is that true? Is that hyperbole? It's an interesting stance.
And guess what? Gullible, or complicit even, Tory MPs lined up to vote for it.
Yes, so this is not all about Labour. This is also to do with some Tories as well.
It was sold to them as a way to stop kids watching adult material. But please, if a teenager can hack M&S, they can download a VPN in seconds, and they're far more advanced than you people think they are at home, many of you.
Not sure who you people are, but VPN. Did you take out any shares in one of those companies beforehand? If not, you should have done. I didn't, but I think that's a fair point in terms of how smart people are. Also, when they want something, when it's something that's been taken away, generally they'll find ways, if the system isn't watertight, and it's not, to get that thing.
Social media firms are now demanding your identification, and they might even go even further and ask to have scans of your face just to access what the government deem harmful content.
Now, so what I would say at this point is that I, like an awful lot of us, the vast majority, want children protected, want the vulnerable protected, and also I think that I am hugely aware that some of these big companies are in many ways uncaring about their customers. This is, for a lot of them, all about money. It's all about profit. So it is absolutely not to defend them. However,
so what is harmful content? Well, the fact is, it's whatever Yvette Cooper thinks it is. Whatever she thinks it is this week.
And this, I think, is not necessarily about Yvette Cooper, but is an important point, in the sense that there is an opinion, is there not, at play here about what is harmful, what is allowed, what is not allowed. And could it be the case, heaven forfend, that a government given control and power over the population likes the taste of that and likes to do it some more?
Zero checks and balances written in this law. Do you remember that term misinformation during the pandemic? No debates, no dissent, no questioning of the science.
Yeah, and again, what is the science? There were people, certainly, who were eminently qualified. I think one was Harvard, one was Oxford, was the other one Yale, and they knew the stuff in terms of, let me call it broadly, epidemiology, and they were rubbished at times and not given anything like the airtime. And instead, we had people like Neil Ferguson. So, yeah, there's a narrative that's got to be driven at times when there is a crisis, and I agree with that, but only for so long. In my opinion, things should have been locked down, and I'm talking about, the so-called pandemic at this point here. They should have been locked down immediately because we had no clue what we were dealing with, but eventually we did, and yet some voices were not allowed to be heard. That's scary. Just think on that before, if you are wondering what could go wrong with this Safety Act, think on that before we move on from what this presenter is talking about.
Well, that same censorship is now permanent. And not just permanent, it is turbocharged. Under these new rules, Ofcom becomes the online Stasi, armed with £billion fines for platforms that don't delete what the British state deems unfit for you, the public at home.
Now, hyperbole to a point, but also I think we do need to pay attention to people who are saying things like this, because, as I've said, history has shown, recent history, ancient history, in-between history, has shown that when governments and certain people in governments get power, they do not like to relinquish it. So let's then go here. We're going to listen to this. This is from a clip from The Capitalist. This gentleman here is Preston Byrne. He is a US-based lawyer. And just listen to what he's got to say.
Were American social media companies that do not host adult content. One of them was called Gab. It's a website run by an American Christian nationalist. Adult content is completely banned. It just focuses on politics, essentially. The other one is called Kiwi Farms. Again, no adult content. It focuses on internet culture. Some of the stranger parts of internet culture, to be sure, but internet culture.
What he's talking about here is Ofcom and how they have reached across the pond from the UK to the US. And I don't think Preston is too happy about that.
And then in July, Ofcom went after 4chan, excuse me, which is obviously one of the most culturally significant, from an internet culture perspective, websites on the planet. And so they were targeting these websites, and the common thread that binds them is not that there was some child protection involved, right? The common thread that binds them, and also Rumble, right, who is apparently targeted in much less stark terms than these websites, most of which are my clients, and all of which were threatened with ruinous fines, arrest, and imprisonment in writing.
So, just to be clear, according to Preston, Ofcom wrote and said, if you don't do what we're saying, you'll be fined and potentially imprisoned. So this is the UK writing to the US about, well, just canning it, stopping it, reducing, restricting what you want to say, what they want to say, what the platforms, or they want the platforms to have people being allowed to say things on.
And if I were to do that in the United States, if I went up to someone and said, I'm going to arrest you and kidnap you and throw you in a prison cell for exercising your First Amendment rights, there's a federal crime for that called conspiracy against rights, and the maximum penalty, absent some aggravating circumstances, is 10 years. And if there are aggravating circumstances, for example, kidnapping involving a death, then the penalty is either life or indeed death. So like this kind of stuff, when Americans take our civil rights extraordinarily seriously, Ofcom, I think, didn't really understand what they were doing when they started sending these stupid letters to my clients. And
say what you think, Preston. You see he's annoyed. These stupid letters to my clients. I mean, what were they thinking?
And, we think that they've created causes of action, and I'm planning on hailing them into federal court to answer for that. So
he's going to take them to court. At least that's the plan. Because it's like, as far as he's concerned, these are threatening letters. You've no jurisdiction. What the heck are you doing? What are you thinking? And I believe that this gives us an insight into some of the people who can work in positions of power and influence in public bodies. It's like, computer says no. You're not allowed to do that. Hold on a second, take a big step back and a few deep breaths and look at this in context. Look at it in geopolitical context. Oh no, you can't do that because it's just black and white. It's like, this is wrong now because we said, and so you can't do it. And this, of course, is just one example. But if that's the type of thinking that may be permeating the system behind the scenes, then this is cause for concern. Let's go back to GB News. Listen ye here.
I've been mourning about this act for a long time, and people poo-hooed it and said it's not going to be as bad as you.
So this is a doctor, a physician, Renee Houdenkamp, and I probably mangled that, Renee. I do apologise. I remember swapping a couple of things on Twitter, I think it was, with her. Very outspoken critic of some of the stuff that was going on laterally in terms of lockdowns, and very well qualified, in my opinion, to talk about it. So listen to what she's going to say here.
Say, we are going to move to a point where the only information you get is what the government wants you to get. We nearly got there in COVID.
Now, throwaway line, again, dramatising something, scaremongering. The only information that you get is the information that the government wants you to get. Is that true? Could that be true? I don't know. But it worries me. I do remember, was it Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand saying the only truth is the truth that we tell you. That's truth. You get it from us. Nothing else is the truth. And she's panicking and floundering, trying to control, again, the population, and possibly with good intention. I don't know. Let's give it a benefit of the doubt, possibly. But that's scary when you hear that. The truth is just from one source. And is that scientific? Absolutely not. No, it's not science at all. Let's go on.
I mean, I was monitored by the government during COVID because I said that young people should not have this vaccine. What has come out this week?
Yep.
She wasn't the only one who was monitored, but there were people monitored.
A report to say that you had to inject 100,000 30-year-olds to prevent one of them from dying.
Yep.
And yet, how many of them have got side effects?
So she's basically talking there about sort of, risk or harm benefit analysis, number needed to treat before you get a good outcome. But you've got to weigh that up against the harms, which, of course, sort of disappear from the headlines because of all the other stuff that's happening around the world right now. But I think this is important. It is important to remember history for all sorts of reasons.
This is a disgrace. When you monitor people, it's because, not because what they're saying is harmful, it's because you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to hear it, yeah. And maybe you don't want others to hear it. Let's listen here. This is Sky News Australia. Perhaps in some ways summarising one perspective about this whole thing.
Okay, there are concerns that the UK's Online Safety Act is at risk of seriously infringing free speech. Elon Musk's social media platform X says that lawmakers made a conscientious decision to increase censorship. The statement says many are now concerned that the plan intended to keep children safe is at risk of seriously infringing on the public's right to free expression. Now, the government has firmly rejected calls to reverse the legislation. It insists that the act is to protect children from harmful content online. But public opposition to this has really grown significantly. An online petition demanding the Act's repeal has attracted more than 400,000 signatures. Mia, do you have concerns that this Safety Act, this Online Safety Act, it might be well-intentioned, but it will infringe on free speech?
I absolutely have concerns about this, and I have to agree with Elon Musk that this is a heavy-handed approach. And
it does seem to be a heavy-handed approach, and I'm not always in agreement with what Elon Musk says at all, for all sorts of reasons. But I think he's right here.
Approach to censorship. I mean, there's no doubt that the political class has motivations to censor what they see online, because what's happening is the mainstream population is waking up to the fact that our traditional mainstream media outlets are full of bias.
So again, what Mia is saying there, traditional mainstream media outlets are full of bias. Of course they are. Of course they are. Sometimes that's with good reason. Again, I can see situations where, for reasons of security, wherever it may be, that some things, of course, are going to be massaged, filtered, restricted, and pushed. Other things promoted. But people are much more aware now that we are a little bit in Plato's cave, or perhaps a big bit. And so how else have they found to communicate, and who else are they listening to? Those alternative opinions. And that, for some people in some governments, can cause them to panic.
of ideology. So they're turning to online platforms like social media in some attempt to engage in a different kind of discourse. And what the political class is seeing is they're thinking, I've got to censor this and control the debate, as they're doing with mainstream media outlets. Now, this happens time and time again. They say it's done in the name of safety. And I think everyone can agree that we want to keep our children safe.
Yes, and again, that's a really important point. We do 100%, most people, I mean 99.999, whatever it may be, want to keep children safe. Is this the way to do it? It would seem so far that it probably isn't going to do that. You heard already somebody talk about VPNs, and I heard someone else mention that what is going on, the bad stuff, or a lot of it at least, is not apparent on the surface, so to speak, of the web. And so it's not that we shouldn't do something like this, it's just that this looks like the wrong mechanism. Again, very blunt instrument, to crack a nut, very heavy-handed. And was that known beforehand? Could we do something with the phones, the actual physical phones, that they are restricted physically in some way and perhaps not given to children of a young age, to encourage them to get outdoors and do those things that are practical? That, I think, in the first instance, would have been what I would have done, or at least tried anyway.
But this isn't the way to do it. It's a path to censorship. And we see it with time and time again with things like, we call it climate safe or COVID safe. And each time we use this word safe, it's code for government censorship.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we should be aware of is that when a government wants to control, it is very often fear that is used. We'll put this in place to keep you safe. Look at those people over there. They're scary. We need to do this because otherwise you won't be safe. And so fear, which is used in all sorts of different ways around the world to control people, to elicit the response, the reaction that people in power want to see, there is no difference here. There is a fear. There is a genuine concern, and I am scared and I am fearful for children. And so, yeah, I'd pretty much do anything. However, in my opinion, I don't think that this act actually does that. If it does, I totally stand corrected, and hey-ho, let's crack on. But I need to see that. And I also need to understand who the heck is making decisions, what is acceptable and isn't. Because I'm sure there are several things, many things, a lot of things that we would all agree on as being unacceptable. But is that going to be what the people in positions of power and influence think is unacceptable? Or could it be that, remember that bias thing that governments are always telling us that we've all got? Could it be that they're biased? They're biased to fear in terms of retaining their own power, their own prestige, their own, let's say, careers, if I could put it that way round. What do you think? I'm very interested in what you think. I hope I'm totally wrong about this. I hope all these commentators are wrong. I really do, or at least that this is hype and all will be well. Will it?